Have you ever truly considered what unfolds, not just for her, but for you, the moment you stop chasing a woman, not out of spite, not as a tactic, but as a deliberate act of self-reclamation? Welcome. If you're watching this, you're likely at a crossroads. Maybe you've just pulled back, or you're gathering the courage to either way. You're not here by accident. This isn't just about her reaction. It's about your dignity, your clarity, and the quiet power that emerges when you choose yourself over the noise of neediness. In today's deep dive, we're unpacking what actually happens when you go silent, not to manipulate, but to align with your values. And we're doing it through the lens of Stoic philosophy, the ancient school of thought that champions resilience, emotional sovereignty, and unshakable inner peace. But before we go further, do yourself a favor. Hit like if this resonates. Subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a moment of this journey, and drop a comment below. I choose inner peace, because that's exactly what we're building here. Now, let's get into it. Number 1. Initial shock and confusion. The first ripple you'll notice: her confusion. When consistent communication suddenly halts, no explanations, no dramatic exits, human nature kicks in. She'll wonder, did I do something wrong? Is he upset? Why isn't he texting back? That uncertainty can spark everything from curiosity to frustration, even anxiety. But here's where most men stumble. They see her discomfort and rush to fill the silence, to soothe, explain, or justify. That impulse, it's not strength, it's fear dressed as care. Stoicism offers a sharper path. One of its core tenets is this: focus only on what you control: her thoughts, her emotions, her interpretation of your silence. None of that belongs to you. Trying to manage her inner world is not just futile, it's a betrayal of your own energy. So, what can you control? Your composure, your boundaries, your commitment to no longer chasing validation. Imagine you've been the one carrying the conversation, initiating texts, planning dates, bending your schedule to fit hers over time. The imbalance grows. You feel like you're auditioning for a role she hasn't even cast. So you stop. And in that void, she feels it. But instead of leaping back in to reassure her, you hold your ground. Not out of pettiness, but purpose. Silence, when wielded with intention, isn't emptiness. It's space. Space for her to reflect, and more importantly, space for you to recalibrate. The Stoics saw silence as fertile ground. In it, you observe your own emotions without being ruled by them. You release the compulsion to chase. You stop tying your self-worth to her attention. And that's transformative. Because when you stop reacting to her uncertainty, you send an unspoken message. My peace is non-negotiable. You're not indifferent, you're anchored. And that kind of emotional self-possession, it's magnetic. Many assume that pulling back will push her away, but often it's the opposite. Your absence becomes a mirror. If she valued the connection, your withdrawal forces her to confront what she's taken for granted. But, and this is crucial, you don't do this to win her back. You do it to win yourself back. Stoicism teaches that external events, her response, her silence, her return, should never dictate your inner state. Your worth isn't contingent on her realization. It's inherent. It's yours simply because you choose to live with integrity. So, in this moment of shock and confusion, your power lies not in explaining, but in embodying you stand firm. Not because you're playing games, but because you've chosen a higher standard, one where your dignity isn't negotiable. This shift doesn't just change the dynamic between you two, it rebuilds your relationship with yourself. And that's where real confidence is born. If this is striking a chord, drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever pulled back and discovered your own strength in the silence? Your story could be the spark someone else needs. Number 2, reflection on the relationship. Now, as she processes your absence, something profound happens. She starts replaying the past conversations, texts, moments where she may have taken your presence for granted. She questions her role, her behavior, whether she missed subtle cues. But here's the Stoic twist. While she reflects on the relationship, you reflect on yourself. This isn't about analyzing her feelings. It's about auditing your own. Did you stay true to your values? Or did you compromise just to keep her interested? Were you authentic or performing? Stoicism insists your worth isn't derived from her approval. It's forged in your adherence to your own principles. So ask yourself honestly, in your pursuit of her, did you abandon yourself? Maybe you over-texted, maybe you ignored red flags, maybe you muted your boundaries to avoid conflict. That's not weakness, it's human. But now you have a chance to course correct. This silence isn't a waiting room, it's a workshop. A Stoic doesn't wallow in regret. He uses experience as fuel for growth. If you realize you were seeking validation through her attention, that's not failure. That's awareness, and awareness is the first step towards sovereignty. Your goal now isn't to get her to miss you, it's to ensure you never lose yourself again. Because here's the truth. The healthiest relationships aren't built on chasing. They're built on mutual presence. And you can't offer real presence if you're emotionally scattered, constantly seeking reassurance. So use this time to reconnect with who you are outside of her. Reclaim your routines. Reinvest in your goals. Rebuild a foundation that doesn't crumble when someone withdraws their attention. And remember, her reflection might lead her back to you. But your reflection, that leads you back to yourself. And that's the only reunion that guarantees lasting peace. If you're seeing yourself in this, hit like. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, type, "I control my actions, not hers." Let's build a community rooted in self-mastery, not dependency. We're just getting started. In the next section, we'll explore how she might test your resolve and how to respond with unshakable Stoic strength. But first, thank you for being here. Stay until the end. There's so much more to uncover. Number 3. She begins testing your boundaries. This isn't manipulation, at least not always. Often, it's instinct. Human beings crave predictability. When someone they've grown accustomed to suddenly withdraws, they look for cracks in the silence. A casual, "Hey, how have you been?" at 2 a.m. A carefully curated Instagram story featuring laughter, friends, or a hint of vulnerability, knowing it's something you'd normally comment on. Maybe she accidentally likes an old photo of yours, or mentions a shared memory in a group chat just to see if you'll respond. These aren't random acts. They're probes. Quiet experiments to see if your silence is real, or if it's just another plea for attention disguised as indifference. And here's where most men lose ground. Caught between hope and fear. Did she miss me? Is this her way back in? They respond instantly. They overanalyze the tone, craft the perfect reply, and re-enter the very dynamic they swore to leave behind. In doing so, they signal something critical. I'm still available for emotional negotiation. But the Stoic man? He sees the test for what it is and refuses to play why. Because Stoicism isn't about winning her back, it's about never losing yourself again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Those words aren't poetic flourish. They're tactical instruction. Her text, her post, her feigned indifference, they're outside events. You don't control them. But your response? That's yours alone. So when she reaches out with a low-stakes message designed to gauge your availability, the Stoic doesn't scramble. He pauses. He asks, does engaging serve my peace? Does it align with the boundaries I've set for myself? If the answer is no, or even uncertain, he stays silent. Not out of spite, but sovereignty. This isn't emotional detachment. It's emotional discipline. Consider this. Every time you respond to a boundary test with eagerness, you reinforce the old pattern you teach her and yourself that your silence is negotiable. But when you hold firm, you rewire the dynamic. You prove, through action, not words, that your presence is earned, not assumed. And that shift, it's magnetic. Women, like all people, are drawn to consistency. Not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind. The man who doesn't flinch when tested, who doesn't betray his peace for the sake of momentary connection, that man commands respect. Not because he's withholding, but because he's anchored. Stoicism calls this apatheia, not the modern apathy, but freedom from destructive passions. It's the ability to witness emotional bait without biting, to see a test for what it is, and choose your response from clarity, not craving. Now, this doesn't mean you never respond again. Maybe weeks later she reaches out with genuine vulnerability. Maybe the context has changed. The Stoic doesn't operate on rigid rules. He operates on principled judgment. He assesses each moment anew. Is this interaction aligned with my values? Does it honor my self-respect? But in the immediate aftermath of your pullback, silence is your shield. And your silence speaks volumes. It says, I value myself too much to re-enter chaos under the guise of connection. If you've ever caved to a boundary test, hitting reply before thinking, refreshing your screen for hours, know this, you're not alone. But growth begins the moment you choose differently. The moment you realize that your peace is more valuable than her momentary attention. So if this resonates, drop a comment below. Tell me, I hold my boundaries with calm. Your commitment to self-mastery inspires others to do the same. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and stay with us. What comes next transforms everything. Number 4, seeking closure. Now, after days or even weeks of silence, something unexpected often happens. She reaches out again. Not with a casual probe this time, but with a direct question. Why did you stop talking to me? Or, did I do something wrong? This is the closure-seeking phase. It's natural. Humans hate ambiguity. We crave narrative resolution, even in relationships that never truly began. For her, your silence may feel like an unfinished sentence. She wants to close the loop, assign cause and effect, restore emotional equilibrium. But here's the Stoic truth. You don't owe her closure. Not because you're cold, but because your inner peace is non-negotiable. Stoicism teaches that your tranquility is your highest duty. If providing a detailed explanation, even a kind one, forces you back into emotional entanglement, reopens old wounds, or compromises your clarity, then withholding that explanation isn't cruel, it's wise. As Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Her need for closure is her experience. Your choice to protect your peace is yours. Sometimes, the most compassionate response is silence. Why? Because closure isn't always found in words. Sometimes it's found in acceptance. And by not feeding the narrative, you force her and yourself toward that acceptance. Imagine this. You explain your reasons. She disagrees, she argues, she pleads for another chance. Suddenly, you're negotiating your dignity. That's not closure, that's re-engagement. But when you remain silent, the unanswered question becomes its own answer. The absence becomes the message, and in time she integrates that lesson without your involvement. This isn't ghosting. Ghosting is avoidance. This is intentional disengagement, rooted in self-respect, not evasion. Marcus Aurelius again. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Be the man who honors his boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's misunderstood. And remember, her frustration with your silence says more about her need for control than your lack of compassion. If you've ever felt guilty for not explaining yourself, release that guilt now. You are not responsible for managing her emotional narrative. You are responsible for your own integrity. So when she asks for closure, ask yourself, does this serve my peace? If not, let silence be your reply. Let your actions, not your words, define your character. If this insight lands, hit like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, type, "My peace is my priority." Let's build a community that chooses clarity over chaos. Number 5. Emotional responses. When you stop chasing a woman, when you cease initiating, cease seeking validation, cease orbiting her emotional availability, you don't just change the rhythm of communication. You disrupt an ecosystem. And in that disruption, her emotions surface like sediment stirred from the riverbed. She might react with anger, a sudden sharpness in her tone, a passive-aggressive comment slipped into a group thread. Or worse, outright accusations. "Why are you ignoring me? I guess I meant nothing to you." This anger rarely comes from malice. It comes from disorientation, from the sudden absence of a reliable source of attention, whether she valued it consciously or not. Human beings, especially when accustomed to consistent interaction, interpret withdrawal as rejection, and rejection, even perceived, triggers defense mechanisms. But here's the Stoic anchor. Her anger is not your emergency. Epictetus was unequivocal. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Her emotion is hers to process. It belongs to her inner world, not yours. You are not responsible for calming it, explaining it away, or justifying your silence to soothe her discomfort. To rush in now, apologizing for boundaries you never violated, teaches her, and yourself, that your autonomy is negotiable, that your peace is conditional on her emotional comfort. That is not strength. That is surrender disguised as kindness. Instead, the Stoic holds steady. Not cold, not cruel, but clear. Clarity says, "I did not owe you my constant presence, I owe myself my integrity." And sometimes that clarity must exist in silence. Other times she responds not with fire, but with sadness. A softer message slips through. "I miss talking to you." Or perhaps her social media shifts. Nostalgic song lyrics, photos of empty benches, late-night stories that feel like quiet pleas. This isn't manipulation, not always. It's vulnerability. And vulnerability is disarming. This is where even grounded men falter. Because now it's not just ego or fear driving you back. It's compassion. You remember her laugh, the way she listened that one time you shared something real, the potential you saw in her, and you think, maybe I should reach out. Maybe she's changed. But Stoicism doesn't deny compassion. It refines it. True compassion includes compassion for yourself. It asks, will re-engaging serve my peace? Will it honor the growth I've committed to? Or will it pull me back into an old pattern under the guise of empathy? You can acknowledge her sadness without absorbing it. You can wish her well without re-entering her orbit. Stoicism isn't about hardening your heart. It's about clarifying your boundaries so your kindness doesn't become self-erasure. Then there's the third possibility, one that often stings the most: relief. She doesn't text. She doesn't post cryptic stories. She simply moves on, faster than you expected. Maybe she's out with friends, smiling in photos, living as if your absence changed nothing. That can feel like a quiet humiliation. Was I even a blip in her life? But here, Stoicism offers its most liberating insight. Her relief is not your rejection, it's your revelation. If your withdrawal brings her ease, that tells you everything you need to know. She wasn't clinging to connection, she was tolerating convenience. And that's not a reflection of your worth, it's clarity about hers. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Her emotion, whether anger, sadness, or relief, is an outside event. You do not control it. You never did. What you do control is your interpretation. You can choose to see her relief not as dismissal, but as release, For both of you, no more chasing, no more guessing, no more contorting yourself to fit a space you were never truly invited to occupy. This is where Stoic emotional discipline shines. It doesn't suppress feeling, it transcends reactivity. You feel the sting, you acknowledge the ego bruise, and then you return deliberately to your center. My worth was never contingent on her attention, and that, ironically, is what makes you unshakable. If this lands, if you've ever mistaken her emotion for your responsibility, drop a comment below, type, "I honor my peace." Let's remind each other that emotional mastery begins when we stop outsourcing our worth. Number 6, evaluating your worth now. As her emotional waves crest and recede, something deeper begins to unfold. On both sides, she starts to evaluate your worth. Not in the transactional sense, but in the existential one. Who was he, really? Was he just eager? Or was there substance beneath the pursuit? Was he steady when things got hard? Did he carry himself with quiet dignity, even when she gave little in return? This evaluation happens in silence, in the space you created by stepping back. But here's the critical pivot. While she's evaluating you, you must be reaffirming your own worth. Too many men wait for her realization to validate their value. They hope her regret will finally prove they mattered, but Stoicism flips this script entirely. Your worth isn't revealed when she misses you. It's demonstrated when you refuse to chase her validation. The Stoics believe that true value flows from virtue, from integrity, courage, temperance, and wisdom. Not from how many people miss you when you're gone, but from how faithfully you live by your principles while you're here. So ask yourself, did you chase because you believed your presence had to be earned through effort, or did you chase because you'd forgotten your presence is inherently valuable? When you stop chasing, you're not proving you're hard to get. You're declaring, I know who I am. I don't need your confirmation to hold that truth. And that declaration, it echoes. Women, like all humans, are drawn to those who possess quiet self-certainty, not arrogance, not performance, but the deep, unspoken confidence of a man who doesn't fracture under silence. Because that man is rare. He doesn't crumble when ignored. He doesn't inflate when praised. He remains centered, consistent, calm. That's the man she begins to see in your absence. But again, her recognition doesn't define your worth. It merely reflects it. Your task isn't to wait for her epiphany. It's to live so fully in your own that her opinion becomes irrelevant. Stoicism calls this autarkeia, self-sufficiency, not isolation, but inner completeness. The understanding that your validation comes from within, forged through principled action, not external applause. So, while she's replaying your last conversation, wondering if she underestimated you, you're rebuilding your life on sturdier ground. You're investing in your goals, reconnecting with friends, training your mind and body, living by design, not desperation. And in that living, your worth becomes undeniable, not because she says so, but because you embody it. If you've ever tied your self-worth to her level of interest, now is your release. Drop a comment. My value is intrinsic. Let's build a brotherhood that stands firm, wanted or not. Number 7. Reaching out again. After days, or sometimes weeks, of disciplined silence, something shifts. She reaches out. It might be subtle, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" slipped into your DMs, or it could be more direct. "I've been thinking about you." Maybe she references a shared memory, drops a nostalgic song link, or even asks point blank, "Why did you stop talking to me?" This moment is a turning point, not because of what she says, but because of how you choose to respond. Because here's the truth. Her reaching out isn't an invitation to reset the past. It's a test of your clarity. Many men misread this. They see her message as validation, as proof they were right to pull back, that she finally gets it. So they flood back in with enthusiasm, relief, even overcompensation, longer texts, immediate replies, sudden availability. In doing so, they erase every boundary they just rebuilt. But the Stoic man? He doesn't confuse contact with connection. He doesn't mistake her curiosity for commitment. He pauses. He asks, what is her intention? And more importantly, what is mine? Stoicism doesn't forbid engagement. It forbids reactivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That standard applies now not out of pride, but principle. So when she messages, you don't vanish into old habits. You respond, not from hunger, but from wholeness. A measured reply might look like this: "I'm doing well, thanks, hope you are too." Short, kind, closed loop. No opening for emotional escalation, no dangling hooks, no performative warmth designed to win her back. Why? Because your goal isn't to rekindle something fragile, it's to protect the peace you've cultivated. Remember, her outreach often stems from one of three things: curiosity, comfort, or convenience. Curiosity. She wonders if you've changed, if you're seeing someone else, if your silence means you've moved on. Comfort. Your presence was a reliable emotional anchor. Even if she didn't actively invest, she liked knowing you were there. Convenience. Life got hard, and she remembered you as someone who listens, cares, and shows up. None of these are declarations of love, none are proof of compatibility, and none obligate you to drop your guard. The Stoic recognizes this. He doesn't resent her motives, but he refuses to be used as emotional scaffolding. If you choose to engage, you do so with eyes wide open. You set the tone. Calm, neutral, grounded. You decline the drama. You refuse the chase. And if her message carries emotional bait, guilt, nostalgia, urgency, you don't rise to it. Instead, you hold space. Not for old patterns, but for potential new ones. Ones built on mutual effort, not one-sided longing. But, and this is vital, you're also prepared to not respond at all. Because sometimes the most powerful reply is continued silence, not as punishment, but as preservation. If re-engaging risks pulling you back into uncertainty, emotional labor, or unreciprocated care, then silence remains the highest form of self-respect Epictetus taught. No man is free who is not master of himself. True freedom isn't found in her attention. It's found in your ability to walk away from situations that compromise your inner order. So when she reaches out, ask yourself, does this serve my peace? Does it honor the boundaries I've set? Am I responding from strength or from the ghost of old need? If the answer to any of these is unclear, err on the side of stillness. Your silence isn't rejection, it's discernment. And discernment is the hallmark of a man who knows his worth. If you've ever rushed back in and regretted it, you're not alone. But growth begins the moment you choose differently. So if this resonates, drop a comment. I respond with purpose, not impulse. Let's build a community that chooses clarity over craving number 8. Moving forward. Now, whether she reaches out or not, whether she understands your silence or misinterprets it entirely, your real journey begins the moment you stop tying your identity to her reaction. This is the Stoic culmination. Moving forward, not just from her, but into yourself. When you cease chasing, you're not just ending a dynamic. You're reclaiming your energy, your focus, your future. At first, the silence might feel heavy. You might question, did I do the right thing? Will she ever see my value? But with time, something remarkable happens. You stop caring. Not coldly, not bitterly, but freely. You wake up without checking your phone. You plan your day around your goals, not her availability. You laugh with friends, train your body, build your craft, and realize with quiet awe that your life doesn't need her stamp of approval to be meaningful. This is eudaimonia, the Stoic ideal of human flourishing. Not happiness dependent on others, but fulfillment rooted in virtuous action. And in that flourishing, something ironic occurs. You become more attractive. Not because you want her to notice, but because you no longer need her to. Women, like all people, are drawn to those who radiate inner stability. Not the loud, performative confidence of social media, but the quiet certainty of a man who knows his direction, guards his peace, and refuses to shrink himself for attention. That man doesn't chase, he chooses. And when he chooses, it's from abundance. Not lack now, what she does next is irrelevant. Maybe she reflects, reaches out with genuine change, and a new chapter begins. This time, balanced, mutual, and respectful. That's possible. Or maybe she fades entirely. She finds someone easier to manage, more reactive, more eager. That's also possible. But here's the Stoic truth. Your worth remains unchanged in either scenario because your value was never in her hands. It was always in your character, in your integrity, your resilience, your refusal to betray yourself for fleeting validation. When you stop chasing, you're not losing her. You're finding you. You're remembering that your dignity isn't negotiable, that your time is sacred, that your peace is the foundation of everything you build. And once you've tasted that clarity, you'll never go back. So, as we near the end of this journey, remember, the goal was never to make her miss you. The goal was to ensure you never lose yourself again. If this has impacted you, if you're walking away with a deeper commitment to your principles, do 3 things. Conclusion: the Stoic reclamation. We've walked through the arc of what happens emotionally, relationally, and psychologically when you stop chasing a woman. From her initial confusion to her boundary tests, from her search for closure to her final outreach, each phase reveals not just her inner world, but more importantly, yours. But let's be clear, this journey was never about her reaction. It was always about your reclamation. Stoicism doesn't promise you'll get her back. It promises something far greater. You'll get yourself back. When you stop chasing, you're not withdrawing from her. You're returning to yourself. You trade performance for presence. You replace anxiety with agency. You shift from seeking approval to embodying integrity. And in that shift, everything changes. Because the moment you stop tying your worth to her attention, you step into a different kind of power. The quiet, unshakable kind that doesn't need an audience to exist, it simply is. This is the essence of Stoic strength. Living by principle, not by outcome. You don't pull back to punish her. You don't stay silent to provoke regret. You don't withhold to manipulate. You do it because you refuse to betray your peace any longer. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. And a good man, according to the Stoics, is one who acts with virtue, even when no one is watching, even when it costs him something, even when the woman he cared for doesn't understand that man doesn't collapse when ignored. He doesn't inflate when praised. He remains grounded, consistent, calm, and that consistency, over time, it becomes magnetic, not because he's trying to be, but because he's being. Now, if she reaches out again with sincerity, humility, and mutual effort, that's her choice. And if you choose to re-engage, you do so not from need, but from clarity. Not from hope, but from discernment. But if she doesn't, if she moves on, forgets, or never sees your value, that changes nothing about your value. Because your worth was never on loan from her. It was always yours, rooted in your character, your discipline, your refusal to compromise your dignity for fleeting connection. This is the ultimate freedom. Stoicism offers the ability to be whole, regardless of who stays or leaves. So as we close, remember this. Her confusion doesn't define your clarity. Her anger doesn't diminish your calm. Her silence doesn't erase your worth. Her return doesn't validate your growth. You grew because you chose yourself. That's enough. And if you take nothing else from this, take this truth. The most powerful thing you can ever do for a relationship, past, present, or future is to stop sacrificing your peace to sustain it. Now, if this message spoke to you, if it stirred something in you, challenged you, or gave you permission to breathe again, do 3 things. Like this video, not just for the algorithm, but as a signal to your future self. This matters. Subscribe and tap the bell, because this path of self-mastery isn't walked in a day, and you deserve consistent guidance. Comment below, I choose myself. Not as a slogan, but as a vow. Your words anchor your intention. And in this community, we hold each other accountable to that standard, not perfection, but principled progress. Thank you for waltzing. You didn't just watch a video, you participated in a recalibration, and that takes courage.